David is certainly remembered for his relationship with Bathsheba that leads to a series of serious sins, as sins of the flesh tend to have numerous consequences. David was not looking to sin. He did not have a scheme to carry out any lustful sin. The sin occurs when he was distracted by Bathsheba, whom he had seen bathing on her terrace from his own balcony, and this turns to lust. This is important to remember because, as far as culpability is concerned, David is not looking for sin as he is strolling on his terrace. The sin starts with lust when he sees Bathsheba. Lust then leads David to devise a plan to summon her, have her brought to his room, where Bathsheba succumbs to David's advances. David used his power as king, we could say, abused his power as king to gratify his desires. How willing or unwilling Bathsheba was in David's lustful demands, we do not know. We simply know that David desired her, she was summoned to his room, they had a sexual encounter, and Bathsheba was pregnant soon after. David knew Bathsheba was married, so based on this knowledge, according to the Mosaic law, David violated 2 commandments, the 6th and the 9th commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery, and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. David's lustful desires, thoughts, intentions are acted out with the wife of Uriah. David knew, based on Mosaic law, that he sinned against God and against Bathsheba and against Bathsheba's husband, Uriah. We are given the details of David's sin halfway through the 2nd book of Samuel. 2 Samuel focuses on the kingdom of Judah from the death of Saul. David is publicly consecrated king, although he had already been anointed by the prophet Samuel. Now the people of Judah know that David is the king to succeed Saul, at least in the south, in Judah. In northern Israel, it's another matter, where Ishbosheth, son of Saul, and the army commander is king. David assumes the authority of king publicly, and unopposed, we could say, at least in Judah. This position of power and his own military successes give him a sense of being his own authority. David and his armies defeated the Philistines, Amalekites, Arameans, Ammonites, and while he knew God was with him, led him and protected him, he acted above the law of God by transgressing God's commands. David's military power, his conquests, and repeated victories over his enemies spiritually weakened him. In this condition of heightened pride, there is also heightened lust and greed. The wife who belongs to another man, his own soldier, David desires for himself, even though David already had several wives and numerous children. David's sin is described in 2 Samuel chapter 11. David was simply resting and strolling on the palace roof when he saw this beautiful woman, Bathsheba. Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, is a Hittite, a foreigner, and a mercenary, which enables David to take advantage of the situation. Bathsheba sent word to David that she was pregnant, and now David would have to find a way out of this act of adultery with one of his soldiers' wives. Instead of going to his house as instructed by David, Uriah, being the loyal soldier he slept at the palace gate with his fellow soldiers, since continence, that is, not having any sexual activity with their wives, was a moral duty during the war. We are at a time when men had a sense of religious conduct even during war. Even after Uriah was invited to eat and drink and got drunk in the presence of David, he did not return to his house to sleep, but joined his master's bodyguards. Bathsheba's pregnancy then could not be attributed therefore to Uriah, as David had schemed. We can sense that Uriah here contrasts with David in Uriah's loyalty to be at the side of his fellow soldiers, a loyalty that extends to chastity during military campaigns, which Uriah observes. To cover up his sin of adultery, his scheming against a trusting and loyal soldier, David has fallen deep into sin. And he has now ended with another plan that he devises to rid himself of Uriah, to see Uriah killed. David instructs his commander Joab to put Uriah in front line of battle, where the fighting was fierce, as Joab had predicted, and as David had desired. Uriah was killed in battle. Uriah's wife Bathsheba mourned the loss of her husband, and when the mourning period was over, David sent for her, and Bathsheba became David's wife. She bore him a son. David displeased God, and he would now have to come to terms with offending God, violating God's commands, 3 of God's commands: coveting another man's wife, taking another man's wife as his own, and a devised plan to have someone killed. Pride, lust, greed. David is guilty. There are consequences having sinned against God. Can you recall a time when you've been confronted with some sin of your own? Were you able to recognize and accept your guilt? Or did you strive to deny or cover it up to others or to yourself? Whatever it is, it's my prayer that, like David, you will find hope in the midst of sin.